One of the things I absolutely loved about growing up in the 70s, some into the 80s, I think that was the best time, actually, to be alive. It was before smartphones and before the internet. Of course, a lot of things are easier today where you try to look something up. You want to know the answer, you can just Google it, and you don't have to ask dad, so to speak, or ask mom how to do a thing. But it's very convenient, but it really does lack a human touch. One of the things I do remember is how important things, how we could sort of entertain our own selves back in the 70s. I really do think it was the best times. I remember comic books, for example. They were great. I mean, you could take comic books everywhere. You didn't need to have batteries. And I had a cousin. Well, I mean, you could use a flashlight. You might need a flashlight, which does remind me of a lot of times when we were camping or sleeping out or just parked out on the living room floor with our sleeping bags or whatever. We would have flashlights and read our comic books, and mom and dad didn't have a problem with that, of course, especially if it was a special event, not a school night. And yeah, comic books were great. I had one of my cousins, he used to have bags and bags, garbage bags full of comic books. And we'd go up to his place, up to my aunt's place, and that was one of the coolest things, to see all these amazing comic books that he collected. It was just amazing. I mean, I remember for him having a lot of Sergeant Rock. He was probably older at the time, but like Sergeant Rock magazines and that sort of thing. Comic books, so they're great. I remember things like, there was all kinds of different ones. You had the Flintstones, you had Woody Woodpecker, Dennis the Menace, you had the Great Gazoo even had their own comic book line. Lost in Space, that old TV show, Star Trek. A lot more fun ones too, like different cartoons they had. We could just peruse through them, and you could read the story, but you could also just sort of just take in the beauty of the art and the hard work that the artists had done, the comic book artists, to do those things. I mean, it was a great time. I think that's why comic book collecting is still such a huge thing for people, and how especially older adults and some of the young folks are getting back into it, is just collecting comics. So yeah, it's just great fun. And I can remember sometimes, like the ads on the back of the comic book would be, well, actually you'd flip a few pages in and you get these little ads, and I don't even know if they were real or not, or legit, but there was places in the States you could order these things. The craziest things. I mean, monster hands. You could get a 7-foot Frankenstein. I don't know if it was a poster or not, but it had glow-in-the-dark eyes. And yeah, there was just so many weird things, like special telescopic lenses and see-through things. It would show a guy looking through his hand, and you could see his skeleton, like they were called X-ray specs, like sunglasses. And of course, there was kind of attractive woman cartoon there. So I'm not sure. I'm pretty sure what they were trying to hint at there without saying so much. If this is your first time seeing my channel, my name is Kevin. This is Silver Hill, and I talk about things for people in the semi-retired and retirement age, which is usually 55 and 65 and up. And one of the things is, I think we can have some of the greatest memories growing up as Gen Xers in the 70s and 80s. And like myself, I'm kind of on that borderline between the boomers and the Gen Xers. Kind of consider myself more of a Gen Xer, really. Not that I get into really all this really definite description of each period. I think it's a little bit silly to get very technical about it, because there's some people that are Gen Xers that probably are more like boomers, and vice versa, and further on down the line. And yeah, we grew up in a time when there was no such thing as, it was just old people, young people, and middle-aged people. That's what we had. We didn't have Gen Xers or boomers, I don't think, back in my day. At least no one talked about it. Yep, comic books were lots and lots of fun. These ads, they would have just the craziest things. I remember usually this was, I think, on the back of the comic books you'd see this, and it's the only thing that I really ever wanted. I mean, who really wanted the skinhead plastic thing? It was all innocent back then that you could cover your hair up with, or yeah. I never really checked out those addresses and see if they were legit places in the States. But yeah, one of the coolest things that would often end up in the back of the page would be this life-size, apparently 6-foot submarine that you could build yourself or whatever. But as a kid, it was just like, oh wow, that submarine would have been awesome to have. Just great. So there was lots of great memories growing up in the 70s and into the 80s, and before we had smartphones, and we just relied on those kinds of things like comic books and cartoons, and that made life a lot lighter because you didn't have to go on and see all kinds of, you didn't have to have parental, filters and things for just going on YouTube, because, you just had the comic books, and if the comic books were decent, you could take them anywhere. You could take them camping, on family trips. Yeah, and you have your friends over, and we'd all go through our different comic books, and it was great. Yeah, those were great times, and I'm not exactly sure if we'll ever get those kind of times back again. I think we won't. I think the days of that kind of just raw fun is over. We didn't have as many checks and balances on things, so we were a little bit more freer. We could do things that perhaps, we should have had helmets back then, but we could ride our bikes anywhere. We used to go down to a gravel pit, and you'd set up a ramp or something, and with these bikes, is the best kind of bike you would get, and you learned how to take care of your bike and different things about mechanics too. And yeah, you just make these ramps and try to do the things you saw on television, the things that they did. And yeah, it was crazy. Yeah, you could, there was like Donald Duck comic books, to get back to that. There were Bugs Bunny, and I remember even in Indiana Jones comic book, and it was just all that fun, stuff you could see on television, you could see it in comic books, and you felt like you were part of that bigger world of pop art and fun, and the art was fun. It was usually solid colors, probably little dot matrices that would basically for tone in the picture. And even the ads, each little ad was in like a sort of not quite pastel, but more like neutral colors of brown and yellow, and these little blocks of ads, and they just grab your attention. They weren't like overly bright, and like you would get on TV stuff today and on the internet. Like the colors weren't as bright, but there was still something really fun about them, because they would draw your attention into them, and that's what I really liked. I really liked how you could become a part of that paper world. Everything, even the fine print at the bottom, saying where the thing was made and what date it was published and where it was printed, that was all part of it. And yeah, it was really lots of fun growing up in the 70s. And I remember the comic books, and that's one of the most fond memories I have. Do you have any memories like that, especially your favorite comic book or whatever? Hey, there was the Jetsons too. Forgot about those guys. Yeah. They were cartoon. I didn't see them as much as the Flintstones, but it was cool. All the stuff was cool. And if you had something your friends didn't have, you could kind of, if you wanted to, you could let them borrow your comic book, and then you could see their comic book. And I can remember it was a big thing. I mean, my grandmom on my dad's side, there was a time when she came, she stayed with us for a while. and in our house. Actually, it was a mobile home we lived in at that time. And I remember she would treat us, you know, she had some money, probably some pension or something, and we'd go to the local drugstore, and she said, go and get yourself a chocolate bar and a comic book. And back then they were only like 67, 70 cents, you know. And I remember coming out with those little sort of like Archie books and that, and yeah, it was great memory, you know, even to this day, even though she's long gone, you know, that act of kindness and generosity, and that human touch that we had with just, you know, the paper in front of us, and with our, you know, how our grandparents would treat us to something like that every now and then. Yeah, it's never going to come again, and it's one of the things I was very glad and happy to be a part of the 70s, and comic books were just one of the fun things of the 70s. So like and subscribe if you want to hear some more about these times and about stuff for people our age. And if you have any memories of your own, just share them down below. Favorite comic book, as I said, or favorite TV show. And you guys have a great day, and see you in the next one. Take care.